Wait, pause for a second. Something quiet, something almost invisible has just shifted, and you probably felt it before you even opened this video. That small tug in your chest, that strange stillness that came out of nowhere tonight, that wasn't random. Somewhere, in a room you not in, surrounded by people you don't know, your name was spoken out loud last night. And the person it was spoken to didn't react the way they wanted to. They tried to look unbothered. They tried to laugh it off. But something in them folded inward the moment they heard you mentioned by someone else. Someone who saw what they couldn't admit they were still carrying. And later that night, when the room got quieter and the noise faded, they wrote something down. Something they never meant for anyone to read. Not even themselves, really. Just a few honest lines on their phone, in their notes app, half deleted, half saved. Something they couldn't say out loud, because saying it out loud would mean admitting it was true. If this message speaks to your heart, comment, "I receive this love," like the video, and subscribe for more. Now let's go back to that night. Because the details matter more than they seem. It wasn't a special evening. There was no anniversary, no reminder, no trigger they could point to and say, "This is why I felt strange." It was just a regular night, the kind they had 100 times since you been gone from their everyday life. They were out with people. Maybe friends, maybe co-workers, maybe someone they barely knew. The kind of group where the conversation stays light, where everyone laughs a little louder than they mean to, where drinks come faster than the words. Your person was sitting somewhere in that room, half listening, half somewhere else. They've been doing that a lot lately, even if they wouldn't admit it. Their body shows up to these places, but a part of them stays behind. A part of them is still standing in a memory they haven't named yet. And then it happened. Someone, not them, someone else at the table, brought you up. Maybe by your name. Maybe by something more indirect, like, whatever happened to that person you used to talk about, or, the one you were so different around. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't gossip. It was just, honest. The kind of honest that catches you off guard because you forgot anyone else had been paying attention. Stay with this, because there's a deeper emotional layer here. What this third person said, and this is the part that matters, wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a long speech. It was something simple, something observational, something like, "You were softer when you were around them," or, "You haven't really been the same since," or, "I always thought you two would figure it out eventually." Just a sentence. Maybe two. But it landed in a place your person had been guarding for a long time. And here's the thing about being seen by someone who isn't trying to flatter you or hurt you. It strips away every excuse you built for yourself. Because when a friend, an outsider, someone with no stake in the outcome, casually points out the truth you been avoiding, you can't dismiss it the way you dismiss your own thoughts. You can't tell yourself you just being sentimental. You can't tell yourself it's been too long to matter. You can't tell yourself you over it. Because they just said, out loud, in front of everyone, what you been refusing to admit even in private. Your person felt that. Felt it deep. And the first thing they did was nothing. They didn't respond. They didn't argue. They just got quieter. Took a slow sip of whatever was in their hand. Looked down at the table for a second longer than they needed to. And then changed the subject, but not before something behind their eyes shifted. The conversation moved on. The night kept going. But something in them stayed back at that sentence. This is where things quietly began to shift. You see, the human heart has a strange way of protecting itself. When something matters too much, we bury it. We tell ourselves we moved on. We fill our schedules, fill our nights, fill our minds with anything other than the one person we trying not to think about. And it works, for a while. It works in the daylight. It works in the noise. It works when there are people around to distract us. But the moment someone else names it, the moment someone else sees it from the outside and says it plainly, the whole construction starts to crack. Because you realize you weren't actually hiding it from anyone. You were just hiding it from yourself. That's what happened to your person last night. They didn't expect this feeling to return, not like this, not in front of people, not because of an offhand comment from someone who didn't even know the full story. They thought they had this handled. They thought time had done its work. They thought the silence between you two had become a kind of answer. But silence isn't an answer. Silence is just unfinished business pretending to be peace. And after that comment landed, your person started drinking a little more. Not in a reckless way. Not in a way anyone else would notice. Just one more than they planned. Then another. Because something inside them needed to soften. Something inside them needed to slow the thoughts that were starting to surface. This is where understanding slowly begins. Because here's what was really happening underneath. They weren't drinking to forget you. They were drinking because remembering you, really remembering you, not the version of you they kept at a polite distance, was suddenly too clear. The sentence from that third person had unlocked something. A door they thought they sealed. And once it was open, the memories came in quietly, one after another. Not in a flood. Not in a dramatic montage. Just little flashes. The way you laughed at something they said once when they didn't even think it was that funny. The way you used to look at them across a room. A specific phrase you used to say. The sound of your voice on a particular afternoon they hadn't thought about in months. These weren't the loud memories. These were the small ones. The ones that mean the most because they prove how much you were actually paying attention to each other. The kind of details only love remembers. What happens next isn't loud, but it changes everything. Somewhere around the second or third drink, your person stopped trying to participate in the conversation around them. They were still there physically, still nodding occasionally, still smiling when expected. But their mind had drifted somewhere far away. Their mind had drifted to you. And then a song came on. Or someone laughed in a way that reminded them of you. Or somebody walked past wearing something you used to wear. One of those small, accidental details that the universe seems to slip into a night when it wants you to feel something. And it hit them, that low, quiet ache that doesn't have a name. The ache of realizing you've been carrying something you swore you put down a long time ago. That's when they pulled out their phone. Not to text you. Not yet. They weren't ready for that. They opened a different app, notes, or a private journal, or even just a draft message to themselves they never planned to send. And they started typing. What they wrote wasn't poetry. It wasn't elegant. It was raw. It was the kind of thing you write when you slightly tired, slightly buzzed, slightly more honest than you usually allow yourself to be. It was the version of them that doesn't get to speak in daylight. They wrote about you, not in a way that wrapped everything up neatly, not in a confession of love, just honest fragments. Maybe I let go too quickly. Maybe I misread what we had. Maybe the timing wasn't actually wrong, and I was just too afraid to be that seen by someone. Sentences they would never say out loud. Sentences they probably won't even remember writing in the same way tomorrow. But they wrote them. And this is the part they still trying to understand. Because here's what's strange about that moment. Your person isn't someone who easily admits to themselves that they were wrong. They not someone who likes sitting in regret. They built a whole life out of moving forward, of staying in motion, of not looking back. And yet last night, for a few minutes in the dark, with their phone in their hand, they sat in something they normally run from. They sat in the truth that you mattered more than they let you see, that you mattered more than they let themselves see. And once that truth had a place to live, even in a private note no one else would ever read, it didn't go back into hiding. Truths don't work that way. Once you write them down, even just for yourself, they become real. They take up space. If this resonates, let it settle in you. You don't need to force anything. You just need to know what's actually unfolding. Because what this third person did, without meaning to, without knowing the weight of their words, was hand your person a mirror. And in that mirror, your person didn't see strength, didn't see the put-together version of themselves they show the world. They saw the part of them that's been quietly missing you. The part of them that softens when they hear your name. The part of them that, in this whole post, everything chapter of their life, hasn't actually moved on the way they pretended to. Stay with this, because there's a layer underneath this you might be missing. The reason this is hitting them so hard isn't just because someone mentioned you. It's because that someone phrased it in a way that revealed the gap. The gap between who they were when they were with you, and who they've been since. And that gap is uncomfortable to look at. Because if they were truly fine, if they had truly moved on, if they had truly outgrown what you two had, that gap wouldn't exist. They'd be the same person, just continuing forward. But they're not the same. And someone who knows them well finally said it out loud. You were softer when you were around them. Read that again. Not louder. Not with drama. Just, quietly. Because that's what your person has been processing all night. Softer. It's such a small word, but it carries a whole world. It means, more open, more themselves, less guarded, less performing. It means a version of them they liked being. A version of them that made sense to them. A version that, somewhere along the way, they traded for safety. And they're starting to wonder if the trade was worth it. This is the part they didn't see coming. By the time they got home that night, the buzz from the drinks had started to fade, but the feeling didn't. They sat on the edge of their bed, or in their car, or on the couch in the dark, somewhere quiet, and they just stayed there for a few minutes, phone in hand, thinking. And here's a thought that crossed their mind, a thought they didn't share with anyone, didn't post, didn't even fully form into words. Why did hearing her name from someone else hit like that? That question alone tells you something. Because if you didn't matter, the question wouldn't exist. If you'd been processed and filed away, the question wouldn't even occur to them. The fact that they had to ask themselves why it hit so hard is the answer to the question. It hit hard because you not done. Because they not done. Because something between you two was paused, not closed. What they beginning to realize now is that they may have confused distance with healing. They thought because they didn't talk about you, they were over you. They thought because they kept their schedule full, they had moved past it. They thought because they hadn't reached out, they didn't want to. But none of that is the same as actually being free of someone. You can stop talking about a person and still think about them every quiet morning. You can stop reaching out and still feel them in the small spaces of your day. You can build a whole new chapter and still know, somewhere underneath, that one chapter was never properly finished. And last night, that unfinished chapter cracked open. Not because of fate hammering down. Not because of some big sign from the sky. But because of something so simple, so unspectacular, that it almost didn't seem important. A sentence from a friend at a table, said casually, almost in passing. That's how the real shifts come, by the way. They don't usually arrive with thunder. They arrive in small comments, in offhand observations, in the soft moments when someone holds up a mirror you weren't expecting. If you ever wondered whether your person still thinks about you, whether some part of them still feels the weight of what was. Last night was a quiet answer. Not a guarantee of what they'll do next. Not a promise of action. But an answer about what's actually living inside them, underneath all the noise. And here's where it gets even more honest. Your person isn't going to wake up today and call you. They're probably not going to text. They might delete what they wrote last night, or look at it and feel embarrassed, or convince themselves it was just the drinks talking. The mind is good at protecting itself in the morning light. The mind is very good at writing off what the heart wrote at midnight. But it's still there. The note exists. The thought happened. The realization landed. And those things don't fully leave just because you don't act on them right away. Something in them moved. And what moves once tends to keep moving, slowly, sometimes invisibly, but always in some direction. For you, the question isn't whether they'll reach out tomorrow. The question is what's happening inside them tonight, and the night after, and the one after that, as they keep bumping into themselves in moments they didn't plan for. As they keep noticing the version of themselves they were when you were close. As they keep wondering, in the smallest moments, why does this still feel unfinished? If you've felt this shift too, you already understand. There's a difference between someone being absent from your life and someone being absent from your heart. They're not the same thing. And your person, whether they want to admit it or not, is finding out that you never quite left the second one. There's something gentle to say here. Something that might come like a quiet reflection. Ecclesiastes says there's a time for every matter under heaven, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to be silent, and a time to speak. Sometimes love asks for silence first, so the speaking, when it comes, can finally be true. That's what this season has been. The silence wasn't the end. It was the part where truth could build up enough weight to surface without performance. And last night, just for a moment, it did. In a sentence said by a stranger to your person's situation. In a note typed in the half-dark. In a thought they had on the way home. What's quietly transforming in them is not romance. It's not a dramatic decision. It's something subtler than that. It's the slow correction of a story they'd been telling themselves about you. They had narrowed you down to a chapter, a memory, a name they didn't bring up. And last night, you became a person again, full, real, unfinished, present, in their mind. That's the shift. You stopped being a closed file. You became a living question. And living questions don't stay quiet for long. So what do you do with all this? Probably nothing. That's the honest answer. You don't need to chase. You don't need to perform. You don't need to send anything. The work that needed to happen, happened, but it happened in them, not in you. Your job, the only one you really have right now, is to keep being the version of yourself that someone could write a note about in the dark and mean every word. Stay grounded. Stay yourself. Stay soft in the places that have always made you who you are. Because what's coming next, whatever shape it takes, whatever timing it follows, won't come from forcing. It'll come from this exact moment continuing to ripple in them. From the next time someone mentions you. From the next song. From the next quiet night when they're alone with their own thoughts and can't outrun what they wrote. You don't need to do anything for this to keep unfolding. It already is. And maybe that's the strangest, most peaceful part of this whole thing. The realization that you don't have to push for what's actually meant to find its way back. That sometimes love does its slow, careful work without you having to manage it. That sometimes the people we thought we lost are simply taking the long road to the same conclusion we already reached. You may have made peace with this a while ago. They are just now beginning to. And that's okay. People don't always arrive at the same understanding at the same time. That's why timing matters. That's why some things have to break apart before they can come together honestly. Because the version of them that was with you before, that wasn't quite ready. That wasn't done seeing themselves clearly. That wasn't done learning what they actually had. The version of them that's reading what they wrote last night, even just glancing at it, even half, deleting it, that version is closer. Closer to themselves. Closer to the truth. Closer, eventually, to you. So tonight, wherever you are, however this finds you, let it settle. Let it be enough to know that the silence you've been holding was not empty. That the distance was not a verdict. That somewhere, in a room you weren't in, your name was spoken, and the person who heard it could not pretend anymore. They wrote something last night they were never meant to share. Something honest. Something soft. Something that surprised even them. And what they beginning to realize now, is something they can't walk away from anymore. Not this time.